Big congratulations to the Pelicans. They've mastered the art of doing nothing. Instead of trying to fix the problem, they're just letting it drag on with head coach Willie Green. Sure, just keep doing the same things and expect different results. That always works. Brilliant strategy. It's Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all on this Tuesday, game day for your Pelicans. As they're on a back-to-back against the Charlotte Hornets and Dallas Mavericks, and head coach Willie Green is still leading the team, presumably going to coach in both of these games. This is the wrong decision for New Orleans, and I'm going to break down why, frankly, fair or unfair, they should have fired Willie Green on Monday, but they didn't, and it's only delaying the inevitable and hurting this team more. And so we'll look at that. I'm going to look at why it's not all bad. There are still things to accomplish this year, and there are ways for the Pelicans, even if they don't make the playoffs or have next year's pick, that they can salvage the season. And even in the future, it's not as bleak as some people want you to think. But do you trust management to actually get this team where it needs to go? We got a lot to cover in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join us on YouTube as well and on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Becoming every day it means you listen Monday through Friday. You're going to want to be listening every day going forward because there's a lot to cover here. So Willie Green is still the Pelicans head coach, speaking to media after practice, letting him run practice. And look, this is a mistake by New Orleans. Everyone knows now, later, end of the season, Willie Green will not be the head coach next year. Rip the Band-Aid off. It's coming. We all know it's coming. Everyone knows it's coming. Everyone inside the building knows it's coming for New Orleans. This has the vibe from talking to people around the team, just has the vibe of like dead man walking. That is what I was told here. People outside the team, media, others see this too. They see this team as a zombie. It's dead, but it's still moving forward. Look, you don't have your pick next year. Tanking doesn't do you any good, and you're unlikely to make the playoffs at this point, but you have things that you can accomplish this season. But by doing nothing, nothing is going to change. You can see a team that has quit on its head coach. You're 0-6 with 3 losses by 30 plus points. You're the laughingstock of the league. And your move is to not do anything from a head coach that you know you will need to fire. And I'll explain maybe in a little bit why they're not doing that just yet, or a reason for why they're not doing it just yet. But that truthfully doesn't matter. The right decision needs to be made, and the Pelicans are not doing this. They are taking it's like a one-way ticket to basketball hell is kind of what they're doing right now. You're not going to get different results from this team. We have seen who Willie Green is as a head coach. We have seen the limitation, everything. We know this already. All the reports of like they're going to debate, they need to consider it more. What more is there to consider? You still have things that you can accomplish this year. Development of Jeremiah Fears, right? He's looked good. You want to put him into position to succeed, but the offense looks terrible. He's going to be your point guard, your lead guard of the future. Let's put him in positions to succeed. They're kind of doing that. I'll give him that one. Derik Queen, who you mortgaged 1 year of your future for. That's an important point for later. You need to play him. You didn't play him at all in the game against OKC when you were down by 30 for the majority of the game. Did you really think Kevon Looney was going to bring you back? Are you really going to put someone like Derik Queen behind DeAndre Jordan, who didn't even play in that OKC game? We'll get into that in the third segment because that's terrible management here. Why not play him at some point? It's not like anyone else was bringing you back in this game. That's mismanagement by the head coach here. You have a goal of upping Zion's trade value, not on an 0-6 team. If Zion Williamson looks at this and is like, I don't want to do this anymore and demands a trade or requests a trade, his value drops. So if you're looking to trade Zion, you're potentially creating a ticking time bomb for him asking out. You need to figure out who Trey Murphy is. The number one guy, a number two guy, 3, 4, whatever it might be. What's his role? What's his ceiling as an NBA player? All-star, not all of that. On an offense that looks like garbage, you're not going to be able to learn from this. You need something to change if you want to accomplish all of those 4 things that I just said. Not just one, but all 4 of them need to be accomplished because you need to find some way to get some benefit out of this season. And by keeping head coach Willie Green, you are not going to do that at all. He doesn't run a ton of plays for Trey Murphy. He said, I need to do more of that. Look, if you wanted to, it's the line you all hear. Like, if someone wanted to, they would. This team is showing you a little bit of who they are. And it's not a good look for the franchise. I've talked a lot about changing perception. This is a great opportunity to do something of that. We'll expand more on that in the next segment here. There are things that you can salvage from this year. I've seen everyone say, this is a lost year. This is a lost year. Look, they put themselves in a not great position here. Absolutely, right? And if that's the case, you've got to do what you can to triage it. There's only so much you can do in this moment. The obvious one is to make a change at head coach and just see what it does. But they're not doing even that. What happens here? We said this is inevitable, right? Whether, again, it's now, week or two, or at the end of the season where he's not coming back. Right? There's the idea of ripping the Band-Aid off, all of that. Why delay it even more and potentially harm yourself even further? Materially, if you make a change at head coach, I don't expect a ton to really change with this team. It's good for perception. That's important. But I don't think a ton will actually change here. But it can't hurt to try, I think, with all of that, right? And so maybe that's why they're not doing it. But I'll give you another reason a little bit in the future here. But it does something. Maybe the players wake up and it gives you some answers to these questions because, look, we've seen this before. I had another point I just completely left with like the anger welling up. I'm like sweating under the jacket here for all of this. This isn't working. You need to do something. You need to do something because look, if he went, this is the point I wanted to make. Then we'll get into the next segment about maybe why they're not doing this and some of the optics around it. If you win these games against Charlotte at home tonight, and then on the second night of a back-to-back against Dallas, both of these games are in theory, winnable. You're not going to fire Willie Green coming off a 2-game winning streak, are you? Again, you're just delaying the inevitable here. And if you want to see material changes, you got to do something. So it's coming. Don't delay it. Don't let this team be a zombie. Make a change. Shocking. But also not shocking, kind of given the situation the franchise is in right now. I want to look at that. Why maybe they're not making a move and why that's even worse. But also gets kind of weird. Let's get into some theories. Not the ones you think. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Game Time. Basketball season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games. Good team, bad team, it's fun to watch basketball. But let's be real, getting tickets can be a real headache. Between waiting in queues, surprise fees, prices that jump right before checkout, it's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is just cheer on your team. So that's where Game Time comes in. It's the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate hack for scoring amazing NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. Everyone always asks, Jake, can you get me tickets to Pelicans games? No, I can't. I don't have that ability. I just tell people to go to Game Time. And if I'm going to make a recommendation, I've got to believe in it. I really love the Game Time app. It's my go-to ticketing app for everything. You get great seats in minutes at a good price. I love that just what you see is what you pay. There's no surprise hidden fees or anything like that at checkout. You see the price, that's what you're going to pay. It doesn't jump up on you. The zone deals are a game changer. You can pick the section. Game Time picks your seats and you save big. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go with Game Time. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen. Today and every day, we are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 12,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. It means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below and let me know what you think, how you're feeling about this team right now. I've been seeing it the past couple days. It's not great here. So let's get into, we kind of went into what they can accomplish, right? Develop Jeremiah Fears, develop Derik Queen by playing him actually. Up Zion's trade value, figure out exactly who Trey Murphy is. If you can get those 4 things done, I think you have accomplished a lot this season in what's a lost year, and you've salvaged enough of it and just kind of done what you can. It's triaging, right? Let's save as much of the iron that has been gouged as possible. That's a terrible analogy. I don't even know where I was trying to go with that. So why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they firing Willie Green? Because it's a little bit, everyone knows it's got to happen. Basically, everyone around the league feels this needs to happen at this point in time because this team does look very broken despite the talent. They should not be this bad. They don't have to be good, but they shouldn't be this bad. And it even goes against, what Joe Dumars said. We want to be competitive nightly, and they're not competitive nightly. You're failing that through the first 6 games in pretty awful fashion. There are reasons not to fire Willie Green. So let's get into a couple things here. One, it doesn't change much. It doesn't change much. I don't expect, they wasted the offseason by not firing Willie Green. Whenever they do this, we're going to do this big FAQ postmortem on this. This is a mistake, right? If you fire him this early, you're kind of admitting we shouldn't have kept him and we wasted the offseason. That's when you install offense. That's when you install defense, scheme, and all of that. And by, keeping Willie Green and you put in Borrego, and maybe Borrego wants to do things differently, you don't have time to do that anymore. You rarely practice full-on big practices throughout the season. It doesn't work like that because of the games basically being played every other day and you need rest and things like that. Your offseason is when you do that. So by keeping Willie Green, you essentially wasted the offseason to have things really change on the court in terms of offense and or defense for the New Orleans Pelicans. But the perception also matters. There's a perception around the team. The open of my show here, the clapping, congratulations, very snarky. But that's the general feeling of how people are thinking about this franchise right now. This game tonight is not going to be pretty. There might be decent attendance, but it's going to be booze. It's not going to be pretty for what's going to happen to this team. The fans are, it feels like, a little bit in open revolt here. That's not ideal. Is this what anybody wants? That's not fun for the players. It's not fun for me to cover. And I'm going to have to. So you have that situation. You need to change that perception. Firing Willie Green would do that, whether it's going to actually change things or not. But here's how I kind of view it. It's a binary thing. Either Joe Dumars wants to keep Willie Green, and if that's the case, that's pretty damning against Joe Dumars on top of everything else that he's done. Or Gail Benson, the owner, wants to keep Willie Green and is kind of forcing Joe Dumars to do that. He's denied this, but let's roll with it for a second. What's that say about Joe Dumars and the lack of autonomy he has in his job, the lack of power, the lack of agency he has in his job if he's almost willing to be a puppet and do that? Maybe he wants to fire, but he's like, I want the job more. That doesn't give me confidence in this front office, in this team to make correct decisions. More on that in the next segment here. But I want to give you a counter to that idea that, if Gail Benson is making Joe Dumars keep Willie Green, what's it say about Joe Dumars? And this was a point someone made to me that I think is very, very valid. The counter to that is, if you're Joe Dumars, you're going to go along with keeping Willie Green in that condition. One, it gives them more time to figure things out. Who your next coach is going to be. They clearly don't have a problem talking to others about a current job that somebody has. They were very obviously talking to Joe Dumars before they officially fired David Griffin. You can do the same thing when it comes to a head coach. Michael Malone, Taylor Jenkins, or others. We'll cover them in the future here. It also gives Joe Dumars someone else to blame. He's made some big mistakes. Big mistakes. You can see it with this roster. Doesn't look great. But now Joe Dumars can be like, no, it's Willie Green. This wasn't me. By keeping Willie Green and having more losses pile up, You can scapegoat Willie Green, even though he's got a lot of blame himself, but Joe Dumars can scapegoat him, go to ownership and be like, yeah, the reason we're like this and it's terrible is that guy, not me. Not that they're going to fire Joe Dumars anytime soon, even if they should be considering it, but it gives him that kind of cover. And when you do fire Willie Green, which will eventually come, it makes Joe Dumars more influential and more powerful. He can go to ownership, Gail Benson, and say, see, I wanted to fire him. You told me I couldn't. Now I'm going to, and look at where we are. It empowers him a little bit more in a sense. This is all an internal power kind of, not struggle, but game, and it makes ownership, look worse internally, and makes Joe Dumars look better. Now, that's also getting into like some Game of Thrones level thinking and stuff with it. This could also just be incompetence. Really could be. Just could be this, again, it goes to the perception. I'm not going to claim that ownership or others are thinking one way or another because I'm not in their heads. I don't actually know. It's just a perception of it all. I don't want to make sweeping generalizations or statements about people's intents and those sorts of things. But it looks like this team doesn't. It looks like the franchise and the higher up people don't care. As I said, it's not going to be pretty in the Smoothie King Center tonight. It's not going to be pretty in the Smoothie King Center tonight whatsoever. And that isn't how this should go. This was supposed to have a season of promise. Vibes in Australia were pretty high. And then, reality came crashing in. This is a franchise that needs to absolutely do some self-reflection, and it doesn't appear that they are. Again, I'm not claiming they don't know or that they're not having actual hard conversations behind the scenes, but what more is there to see? What more is there to discuss? What more needs to change or happen for them to make bigger changes here? You need to change the perception around this franchise. I have been saying this basically since the Derik Queen trade, since maybe even before that with the Joe Dumars hire. This team has done a very poor job of that. The narrative around them, around all national media, which came up big time on Sunday, and it's only going to get louder, is not good. If you lose at home to Charlotte, then you lose on the road to the Dallas Mavericks. That's a possibility too. Both games are winnable. Both games are easily losable as well. What is that going to look like? Even if you win Charlotte but lose to Dallas and you start 1-7, what difference is there? If you start 2-6, are you going to be like, oh, the ship's righted and okay, let's give Willie Green a couple more weeks? And then no, those wins don't come and nothing's actually going to change because, again, what's actually going to change with this team? I don't see something coming with the way some of these guys are playing, with some of the body language and all of that. They're healthy for the most part too, though Zion Williamson, and this is concerning, is listed on the injury report for this game as questionable with left hamstring soreness. Hamstrings and Zion are not something that I want to see together in a statement, like ever again here. Maybe it's just they don't want to play him on back-to-backs, but again, supposedly the healthiest he's been, and you don't want to play him on back-to-backs. If you're trying to change the perception, they are not doing a good job of that. So do they care about the perception is then the question. It's very obvious what that is. What the perception is. I don't know whether they care or not. You would hope, and that means you do need to take some action here, but it's only going to get snarkier. It's only going to get worse, and the fan base is checking out. Once the fan base checks out, they don't go to games. You're 6 games into the year. You're 6 games into the year, and that's kind of where we are. That's not an encouraging sign whatsoever for this season. Now, look, it's not all bad. I don't think it's as serious long-term as some people want to make it out to be for New Orleans in terms of assets and like the state of the franchise. I've seen a couple things written where like, this will take years to recover from. I actually don't think so. And I'm going to tell you why it's not all bad coming up next, but there's a huge asterisk with that, a big but, massive but, with it not being all bad. You know what that is? I'll tell you what that is coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So even if you miss the start of a game or you want to ride a hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks or not fourth quarter comebacks if you're a Pelicans fan. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It just keeps every game more exciting, which you kind of need right now if you're a Pelicans fan, especially if your team is, well, like New Orleans here. Look, you can go against New Orleans in the third quarter, in the fourth quarter. We've seen the runs that teams are making. Those lines are updated every single quarter. So if you know things are going to go a certain way for or against the Pelicans, you can jump on it. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Again, that is $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins over at FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 12,000, I got it right that time, fans on YouTube as well. And become an everydayer. It means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. Let me know if you're an everydayer in the comments down below. Let me know what you think about this team. Also, if you're not an everydayer, it's okay. I just appreciate you tuning in, listening in whenever it is that you do. And don't forget, you can also watch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network every weekday at 10:30 a.m. So, we're talking how it's bad for New Orleans, right? I just ripped the team in the beginning saying, like, what are you doing here? This is dumb, right? They need to make a change here. They need to do something. They absolutely need to do. And they did the most complacent, lazy, easy thing by not firing head coach Willie Green for whatever reason they decided to make that decision. It's not as bad as some people want to make it out to be. I've seen people being like, they're never going to recover from this. I've seen a couple things written with salary cap stuff of like, this is the bad situation they're in. It's not as bad as you think. For one, the Pelicans, other than this coming draft, own all of their picks going forward. That's the most important thing, is own your own draft picks so that if you are bad in the future, you can take advantage of that. That's what they're missing this season. That sucks. That hurts you. That's why you've got to kind of make the most of this year into other ways. But essentially, they used next year's pick early. They took a cash advance that comes with interest, right, off their credit card to make their lottery, next year's lottery pick this year in Derik Queen. Puts a lot of pressure on Queen. But if Queen develops, even if he doesn't develop as well or is as highly rated of a prospect as one of the guys in this upcoming draft, and he's not, say Queen ends up like a B+ and you could have gotten an A, they're close enough that like it hurts. And A's matter more in the NBA than a B+, and that difference is pretty significant. But at the end of the day, it's not like one of these crippling things, no matter what the other player turns out to be. So it's not the end of the world. It's not like, oh, they're trying to relocate the franchise and all of that. None of that stuff's happening here, right? It's just incompetence. It's truthfully what it is. So you can survive this. Sets you back maybe a year, but it's not something that sets you back 6-7 years. You just got your rookie from next year a little bit early. Okay, that's fine. I can live with that. You own all your picks going forward. This is a 1-year thing. You rip the Band-Aid off and you move forward. That's good. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a franchise-altering mistake. Mistake nonetheless, but not necessarily something that basically is like, you should contract the Pelicans because they're never going to be competitive again. I don't know where that voice came from, but I've kind of seen some of that. So you're fine. You're fine in a sense. In 2 years, you'll be okay. And you can kind of get this team where it needs to go. But let me ask you a question. This is rhetorical. No, it's not. Answer it. Do you trust the front office to actually get this team where it needs to go? With some of the things they've done, with the way they mortgaged the future for Derik Queen, with the lack of awareness they have around this franchise, drafting Derik Queen, not having Willie Green play him, all of those things look bad. Misalignment there, mismanagement there. You signed DeAndre Jordan to a fully guaranteed deal, basically putting you right up against the luxury tax. How is that going to impact you at the trade deadline? DeAndre Jordan, by the way, didn't play against OKC. You needed him for a couple of days. You did not need him for the season, that when Kevon Looney comes back, he plays above DeAndre Jordan. You also have Carlo Makovich that you want to see what he can do. You have Derik Queen. You have Yves Missi. You did not need DeAndre Jordan on a 3-point-something fully guaranteed deal. The NBA covers part of that, and it doesn't fully count against the luxury or the cap, but it's hurting you. And that's going to create an opportunity cost where if you try and make a trade, you might need to dump Jordan's contract and attach future draft capital to it. And it goes back to mismanaging assets, something that this team has already done. Or it's the opportunity cost of you don't make a move because of the money that it's going to, this team shouldn't go into the luxury tax. Even small stuff like keeping Jaden Springer 1 or 2 days over basically the NBA cut deadline, the start of the season, is head scratching. Why pay him $70,000 more and put you $70,000 more closer to the luxury tax than you need to be, especially after you didn't play him at all in preseason? It's just weird little things like this. And in a small market where the margins are very tight and thin, you need to actually nail those little things. So yeah, the Pelicans' future is truthfully fine. And I don't think this is one of those things where it's like, oh, you're never going to recover from it, right? What's the Tiger King? I'm never going to financially recover from this. Like, we're not there with this team. But that's only if you're managed well going forward. Do you trust them not to trade away future first-round picks? Under no circumstances should this team trade away future first-round picks. No circumstances. Do you trust them not to? That's the concern right now. What they've done have given you, or should give you, no faith in the front office here. The way this process was rushed, the way that they don't seem to be seeing the seriousness of the situation this year. What are their goals? What are they trying to accomplish? If it's play and develop Derik Queen, you're not doing that. Is it figuring out who Trey Murphy is? Are you, all of those things. I'm concerned about that. So why it's not crippling, the front office can be crippling, and that's kind of the problem. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. We got a game tonight. Let's see if the Pelicans get their first win. We'll cover it here on the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and I'll be back with y'all tomorrow.